Welcome to Interruptions Podcast, where we have stimulating conversations with our guests about their culture, faith, traditions, and life choices. We invite guests who are open and willing to share their journey and disrupt the silence on their personal and professional interruptions that have impacted their lives as it relates to their emotional wellness. Kathy and I are passionate about every episode and committed to providing you an actionable advice that you can apply today to reinvent yourself. So, today's podcast is called Falling in Love Part 2. Kathy, hello.
Hello, happy holidays.
Happy holidays. How you doing?
I am well. I am well. I feel like this holiday I really got it right.
I'm glad you got it right. We're going to, we've had some technical difficulties. So, to our guests, please don't forget to click on the subscribe button and enjoy part 2 of Falling in Love. Kathy, you want to welcome our guests to the room?
I sure do. Today we are welcoming Dr. Tandy. Hi, Dr. Tandy. How are you?
Hi.
Real technical.
I was fixing my makeshift desk, which is actually a cardboard box. I'm
That's
very
all right.
fancy.
Sometimes that works best. So, Dr. Tandy, I understand that you are an eye surgeon and a transformational coach. And you are on our podcast tonight entitled Falling in Love Part 2. You are the mother of 2 children and a divorcee, and you are in or were in the armed forces.
That is right. Yes, I am a major in the United States Army.
That is
Reserve.
awesome. Wonderful.
And we get to do talk about 2 of my favorite things. One is sharing and the other is love.
All right. All right. Well, before we get to the love part, let me just ask you really quickly, what made you decide to become an eye surgeon? And then after that, if you can answer, what is a transformational coach?
All right. How long is this podcast?
I know, right? I know. That's all right. We're going to make it work. We're going to make it work.
I guess the brief answer is that it's where life took me. I first decided sometimes we make a decision and that decision ends up leading to other decisions that we have no idea about. So the first decision on September 11th, 2001, I made the decision and commitment that at that time I was working for M&M Mars, the candy company. I had all the candy that I could possibly want. And I decided on that day that I was going to change my life. And I decided that the next year I was either going to be in medical school or I was going to be working in the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry. Thankfully, I was able to go to medical school. At the time, I thought I was going to be an obstetrician and gynecologist and help give birth to babies, because I still think that life is one of the most miraculous and amazing things. But God had other plans for me. And when I was in medical school, a couple of things happened. One, my vision started deteriorating a little bit. And for the first time in my life, I needed to wear glasses. And then a second thing happened. I ended up interacting with this amazing woman who was an eye surgeon. And I just thought she was so cool. And the things that she did were so cool. And interestingly, now she's not even practicing. She's an artist. So it's funny how our life takes all kinds of twists and turns. And then after I had been practicing ophthalmology for a few years, I decided that there was something else that I felt that I really needed to do. And that journey, one of the it was a number of things. And just to make the story short, one of the things that happened that really changed my perspective of the world is I saw the documentary on Netflix called I'm Not Your Guru by Tony Robbins. And I don't know, have you guys seen it?
No.
In the documentary, it highlights Tony Robbins' signature 5-day event called Date with Destiny. And in Date with Destiny, people like literally sell their all to pay to come to this event. And in 5 days, their lives were changed. And it struck me, it said, wow, because sometimes I in 5 days, it's hard enough to try to convince someone to take their medicine. But the idea that I could have an impact in a positive way on so many people in such a short period of time helped me to pursue the pathway of becoming a transformational coach. And a transformational coach is just someone that helps to coach you from a transformation to into a transformation from perhaps and it can be any transformation. It can be a challenge in a relationship. It could be making a comeback with after a divorce or career transition, or even a weight loss, any kind of transformation that you are trying to accomplish. A transformational coach can help do that.
Well, Kathy, we're going to have to follow up on that transformational coach.
You
know?
Absolutely. Dr. Tandy, when Odell was we were, going over the show tonight, and she mentioned eye surgeon, I was like, oh my God, that's awesome, because I recently had an issue with my eyes. Never, I wear glasses, but I had a real issue with one of my eyes where it was very serious. And I have a newfound respect for ophthalmologists and people in your field, just to not even understanding all of the titles that go along with an eye surgeon. I think the first person I saw was a neurological ophthalmologist. I said, oh my God, how impressive. So good, wonderful for you. That is awesome. You're doing a very, very important service to people that, like me, never imagined that we would ever go through serious eye conditions. So thank you for what you do.
When we talked about you coming on the show, Kathy's face lit up. I said, "Oh, I forgot." Yes.
Yeah, that was me.
Here we are talking about love. So yes, Dr. Tandy and I met when Dr. Starworth, who has been on our show before, the Reverend Dr. Charles Starworth, correct?
No,
not Charles. What's his first name?
Charlie.
He
had a cousin. He has a cousin who is Charles. And I don't know what happened between him and Charles, but he's not like being called Charles.
Charlie Starworth, the Reverend Dr. Charlie Starworth.
That is so funny.
He had a podcast conversation that he wanted to talk about the Black church and mental health. And Dr. Tandy was the moderator. She got to ask us questions. And I just loved her energy. And we talked, we met, we clicked. And it was a great time getting to know you. And I said, I've got to have you on the podcast. So here it is, almost a year later. And here you are on the podcast.
Oh my gosh, was that almost a year ago?
It's almost a year ago. So since then, he has been on our show, and we've talked about mental health in the Black church. And all of a sudden, I'm watching, Dr. Starworth on podcast every morning at 7:00 talking about mental health. And then I see you pop up, and I'm like, okay, so he still has a working, the two pieces didn't click for me. And then all of a sudden I see you in South Africa and he's with you. I said, okay, she's not just working. Something else is going on here. So, Dr. Tandy, you are on our show. The spotlight is on you. As we've talked, you've shared that you are a divorcee and a mother of how many children?
Oh, and you know what? That question, every time I hear it, it breaks my heart. I feel for I really feel for the moms who have
Ah,
lost a child to death, because when I was married, I had a stepdaughter, and I never called her my stepdaughter, but she was. I always consider her to be one of my children. And if you asked me how many children I had, I would say three. But
okay.
every time someone asks me, like, it just brings back that memory,
Mhm.
because I
Yeah.
unfortunately am not able to be in her life anymore. So I have two biological children.
You know, thank you. And I understand because, as I've said to Kathy, when people ask me how many children do I have, and I feel that if I don't claim my son, then I'm missing, something's missing, you know? So I still struggle with answering that question. And I
Mhm.
say that I'm a mother of two and my oldest daughter. So I'm still not ready to let go just to say a mother of one. So I understand exactly what you mean.
That's
Exactly.
wonderful. So, Dr. Tandy, um, tell us what your challenges are in terms of dating and being in a different state, or other challenges. I'm saying challenges. Maybe you're good with it. So, are there challenges associated with that?
Actually, it's funny because when we first connected, my I at the time, or around that time, I had connected with this gentleman. I was in Delaware. I connected with
Mhm.
this guy in New Jersey, which is right the next state over. And the two of us just could not, and we had great rapport on the phone. We could not get it together to meet. It was like too complicated. So when my Superman, I call him Superman, when he came around, I was like in Connecticut. I was like, no way, Jose. But this pandemic has actually been, in terms of allowing us to get to know each other, it's been a blessing in disguise, because he is like he was able to do a lot of the work that he does remotely, and I was also more available, so we actually ended up getting to spend a lot of time together. And it's funny because, like, we're just learning a thing about each other, like what it's like to be with each other without a pandemic. Not that we're without the pandemic, but just things like
Mhm.
now he's like watching all this Monday night football. And I'm like, you never watched all this football last year. And he says, oh, because there was no game. There was no game. Nobody was playing because of the pandemic. Um, but yeah, actually the distance has not been an issue yet, but now I'm moving further away, so we're entering a whole new chapter. I'm moving further away. We're coming out of the pandemic because a lot more stuff is now in person. So we're just going to have to wait and see what happens with that.
So Dr. Tandy, tell us, you meet in the midst of a pandemic. So it's not like you met at dinner or at a function. Or, so please tell us. And people always say that it's difficult to date after a divorce. How do you find guys? How do you find men? They think not in the workplace, they think you go to church, but no, you don't go to church to find the guy. But actually yours is in church. So how did you find Dr. Starworth? How did you two meet?
Well, I love the question about how do you find a guy? You find a guy by meeting people, because guys are people too. And the more you get used to meeting people, the more exposure to guys and girls you will have. And people are everywhere. Right? There's people at the gas station, there's people at the grocery store, there's people in church, there are people at the gym. Everywhere there are people, there are opportunities to meet guys or to meet other people, because you never know. Like, um, you could meet someone at the gym who ends up introducing you to your guy. So there's people, and then of course nowadays, which is how we met, the internet is a place where there is literally an infinite number of men and women. But I would just say that, in my opinion, it's better to, they say you get what you pay for, but it's better to, because if somebody hasn't invested any money in it, like, how much skin do they really have in the game? But when somebody, like, you can go anywhere from doing matchmaker servers where people pay thousands of dollars, and those people tend to be more serious. Like, if there's someone's paying $10,000 to have somebody find them someone, they're not looking for a booty call. Or you could go all the way to free, and there's a lot of free sites. And actually, we met on Bumble, and for one, they have this option where for a few dollars you can get do the paid version for 1 week. So I just did it for 1 week because it tells you, because people anyway, I don't know if you want to know all about Bumble, but anyway, when I did the paid version for 1 week, it gave me access to people who were not in my normal radius that I normally looked at, and people were able to contact me. And I had gotten this very sweet message from a certain tall, dark, and handsome gentleman who I responded to. If you ask him, he says it would take me forever to respond to his messages, but I guess good things come to those who wait, right?
That's right.
And I would like to first apologize to our guests. I did not mean to always just refer to looking for someone after a marriage as always being a guy, because it could be a guy or a woman. So whoever your choice of love is. So please accept my apology that love after divorce is open. So you met Dr. Starworth on a app. Wonderful. And the fact that he is a reverend, pastor, a politician, all that excited you or scared you?
No, I was like, pastor, no offense, but some of the men of the cloth have quite the reputation. It's not always good or godly. And then politicians, as we know, I don't know, when I think of politicians and dating, I think of Harvey Weinstein for some reason, but from Harvey Weinstein to Bill Clinton, some of the politicians don't have the best, or even our last former president, whose name I will not mention, but
thank you.
They don't always have the best reputations there. So I was like, like, yeah, that was like the third strike. First strike was Connecticut, and the second strike was pastor, and the third strike was politician, like, you're out. And I think that just goes to highlight that it's really important when you're dating, like, challenge your assumptions and challenge your beliefs and challenge all the things that you thought that you would never do, that you would never, like, try it out. You don't have to marry someone just because you've been on a date with them, but you never know. You never know what may happen.
Well, obviously, he did something right, because all of those negatives evidently got accepted. So that's really interesting. That is so funny. But I understand that you two traveled last summer to South Africa. So whose trip was that, and who invited who?
Well, I have to say that it was one of the most romantic, unromantic gestures that a man could ever do for a woman, in my opinion. So obviously we were still in the midst of the pandemic, and at the time the Delta virus was in it was the main virus that was out of control and super scary, and South Africa was one of the main places where it was. So it wasn't just that we were traveling, we were like traveling into the pandemic central. But the reason why we were traveling is because my dad was sick and in the ICU. And my dad had been sick before, but something this time just said, you've got to go. You've got to go. And it's very scary. It's like I can't even imagine having to make that trip by myself, but it was almost like it wasn't even a question. He was just there for me. And like keep your I'm not gonna say keep your diamonds. I want the diamonds too. but that was worth so much more than a diamond or anything else that he could have done to be there for me during one of the most difficult times in my life, and to sacrifice his money, his time, his potential like health safety, or risk his health just to be there and support me was just one of the many reasons that highlights why he's such a wonderful man.
Dr. Tandy, please tell Kathy the story when he met your father.
So, and it's funny because I always wanted my dad to meet it was really important for my dad to approve of the man that I was with, but unfortunately my dad was in the ICU. He was sedated, so he's basically in a medically induced coma, so he wasn't responsive. He did for one visit come to a little bit, but on the time, and there was all these restrictions on people not being allowed to visit, but by the grace of God, like I literally, after flying about 24 hours, was at the door of the hospital and they wouldn't let me in because of all the COVID restrictions. But by the grace of God, I was able to see him, and Dr. Stolberg was also able to see him. And when he went to see him, he said, in front of all the ICU nurses, I wasn't there because only one person could go in at a time. He said, okay, I'm going to ask you for your permission to marry your daughter. And if you don't say anything, I'm going to assume that that's yes. So obviously he couldn't say anything.
Oh, that's adorable. That's adorable.
That's priceless.
But I don't know, even though they didn't get to talk, I could even start cheering up, but I'm really glad he got to meet my dad.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. So this is your second time around. What is, do you feel a difference this time versus the first time? What's the difference for you?
Well, I think one of the big differences is that before I was in my mid 30s and I felt like so much pressure. Like I don't know. I feel like the society gives women who are single this stigma, like, well, we'll always be like, well, what's wrong with you? Like, who says something has to be wrong with you to be single? And then, of course, it was the whole like biological clock ticking, because one of the things that I wanted more than anything in the world was to be a mom. And now I don't have that because I'm over what society thinks, and I don't feel pressured or rushed or biological clock ticking about being, giving birth or having children.
Mm-hmm.
And then also, what did they say? Once bitten, twice shy. So now, and I think perhaps maybe I've swung the other way, because before I think I probably was like overly confident and it was like, oh, this doesn't matter. With this, we're just gonna forge straight ahead. And now I'm like, well, what about this? What about this? So I don't know. Maybe I'm on the other. The pendulum has swung to the other side.
Now, yeah, that does happen. It does happen. How did you show up differently in this time around, second time around? We always try to make sure that we don't bring the baggage from our first relationships into the second, or have those same expectations of the new guy in our life that we had with our husband, which we're society us tells us to have a different approach, to be more open. But this time it's about you. How did you approach this relationship differently?
Well, one of the things I did was that I didn't jump into a relationship immediately after we got divorced. We were separated. So it wasn't quite 18 months, but it was almost 18 months between the time we got officially separated and the time when I met him. And so that gave me a lot of time to process. At one point I had 2 different therapists, which was pretty cool. Thank you, U.S. Army. I had 2 therapists. I had a lot of time to think. And the other thing that that I like to do is I'm very analytical, and I take responsibility for my stuff. And it's so easy, especially when we're in a relationship, especially when someone's done something egregious, right? Like if somebody has had an affair, it's really easy to say, well, he did this.
Mhm.
And one of actually the things that my actual like real red flag, runaway is if I meet a man who is divorced, or when I ask about his past relationship, and all he does is like talk about it. All guys say, oh, my ex was crazy. every other ex woman is crazy. And then when they blame the other person for the demise of their relationship, because that says to me that this is someone who has not owned their role in this relationship. And so I had to own my crap. And one of the things that I realized is that in the Bible, it tells men to love their wives, and it tells women to respect their husbands. And it's really easy to respect somebody when they're acting respectable, but it's very challenging. It can be challenging to respect someone when they're not acting respectable. But the Bible gives us no outs, and I think a lot of times, and I looked at that. I studied what does it mean to respect a man, and a lot of times they think women can be disrespectful not even knowing that they're being disrespectful. Like I have some serious control issues, down to wanting people to take my route when we go somewhere, right? Like, no, you got to take 95 because 95 is quicker. And I learned, one of the things I had to learn is how to let a man lead and be a man, and I don't have to micromanage what he does, and I can sit back and let him take the lead. So I did a lot, and that's just one example, but I did a lot of internal work before the relationship and then also during the relationship. And just my whole approach was just very different. Very different.
I like that. And two of the things you said are very key. You said that you take ownership of your own stuff, and that's important when you're trying to be on your journey of healing, right? But you also said something key as well, which we love to hear people talk about, is the fact that you were seeing a therapist, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? You recognized that you needed support in trying to get through whatever you were trying to work through. My question to you would be: you mentioned that you were seeing two therapists. Is there a reason? Did they have different styles, or did you just? I mean, because that could happen, right? I'm gonna go to the one that agrees with me. I want to. I'm gonna go to the one that says my husband is horrible, and that everything I do is right, right? No, but is there a reason? Is there a reason why that you decided to see two, or it just happened that way?
Well, there were, at the time I was doing active duty, and they were both available to me, and they were both wonderful in different ways. One was very much like a very like practical, like hands-on, like you don't have diapers, this is the number to the diaper bank, like kind of very, very practical, like this is how you like survive life.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one was more like, have you given your feelings the time and space that they deserve? I mean, I love him great, and I think that I really don't understand. I really think that everybody could benefit from the right therapist, and I'll say not every therapist is right for everybody, and it's in this pandemic, it's gotten extremely hard to find therapists, but they can be so beneficial in your healing. You don't have to be crazy. You just have to be a human being with a life.
Yeah, that's true.
If that's the case, and that a challenge, human being with a life and challenge, you could benefit from therapy. And I encourage everybody to consider it, whether it's a relationship therapy or and definitely premarital therapy. Because some of the stuff people end up like fighting about, it's like, wait, you didn't talk about this when, like, this is the kind of basic things that people talk about in premarital preparation. Like, this is like, oh, you didn't talk about that. He wants kids, but you don't want kids. Like this, this should not be a surprise at this moment in time. You didn't talk about his expectations that you're going to cook every meal 7 days a week, and he's just going to sit on the couch after work and rub his belly. Like these are a lot of things and issues that get worked out in premarital therapy.
Yeah, it's that whole dating is interesting. But I want to talk about you. So you're dating the Reverend Dr. Charles Stallworth, and he's the pastor of a church. You go to the church. Tell us what happens. They meet the pastor's date.
So I was terrified of going to the church, because we all know any church that has a handsome single pastor, there's always women that are in the pews trying to, shoot their shot. And I don't know, and I'm not your typical first lady. I don't have too many hats. Like, I don't know. I just don't see myself as like typical first lady. I don't see myself as typical very much of anything for that matter. So I was really nervous about how I would be received. And then too, also, I'm also a very private person. So I remember we actually had a fight. We had a fight once because I had said, if we got engaged, I would want us I would just want a few days for it just to be between us before we became public, because I just want something just for us. But he was like, "Oh, you're ashamed. You don't want to." And I was like, "No, I don't want it to be me, you, and the church. I just want it to be me and you just for a few days before
The whole world knows. Yeah.
right because that's a whole because when you get married to a pastor, those are two different roles, right? There's the role of wife and there's a role of first lady, and those aren't the same thing. So nevertheless, I was very nervous, but I have to say that the women of East End Baptist Tabernacle Church in Bridgeport, Connecticut are like, I could cry. They are so amazing. They are so loving. They are such some of the most wonderful people. I'll just tell you a little story. I think it was I was pastor appreciation celebration, and my daughters are 7 and 4, and they had a refreshments in the church afterwards, and one of the ladies made this like mini table just for them, and she set it up with a toy for each of them, and it was like just perfect. It was like a perfect little setting for 2 little girls, and for her to have done that for them, oh my gosh, it just touched my heart and warmed my heart so much. So I love that church, and I'm so glad that I get to be a part of it.
Oh, that's beautiful. That is beautiful. So, Dr. Tandy, we always ask the question, you're busy and you're traveling and you have 2 children and you are an eye surgeon and you're in a relationship, but at some point you have to take care of yourself. What do you do to practice self-care?
That is such a great question. And I am a self-care major advocate. And my newest soapbox is be lazy. Because everybody else is saying, like, work harder, better organize your time so you can get more in. And I'm like, no. And actually, Dr. Stallworth has been instrumental in like helping me like slow down. It's okay to relax. And part of my self-care is having times for like on Saturdays I observe the Sabbath, and I am very intentional about doing a whole lot of nothing. And it's also about recognizing when how I'm feeling and what I need. So like yesterday I was like I can't with the world, so I went to bed like at 8 o'clock or 8:30. So getting sleep is so huge. I love taking a bath. That's one of my daily rituals. I love the spa. I love getting my nails done. And I think that like sometimes like self-care doesn't have to be all elaborate. It doesn't have to be going to the spa in Arizona, although I do love doing that. But self-care can be making yourself your favorite cup of tea, or making time and watching your favorite silly show on TV, or making time just to chat with a girlfriend who always makes you smile or makes you laugh. That's all part of self-care. And I find that as women, if we are not intentional about it, it's really easy for us to neglect ourselves.
Yes.
Wonderful.
Thank you. Kathy,
Yes.
do what you got to do. Dr. Tandy, we thank you for being on our show this today. Apologize for the tech glitches. We've got to have you back. I'm glad you are in DC. You are new job, new life challenges, and new interruptions, positive interruptions. I know Dr. Starworth is going to watch this and go, "What do you mean that's good? No, I don't want to hear it." No, I want to hear in Connecticut, but it's a pleasure meeting you and having you on our show, and we would love to have you back again. And maybe we'll be introducing you as the first lady. You know, who knows?
Well, I was gonna say, I'm going to, because you are very comical as well. And when we had Dr. Stallworth on, I think I forgot the topic we were even talking about because we laughed through the entire show. And
He
so
was
now
hilarious.
you as well are just. So I'm gonna wait till I'm really depressed about something. I'm gonna call one of you, and then. And I know I'll be cheered up within 3 minutes of talking to you. So I look forward to when you come back to Connecticut, and I hope to meet you when you come back. But what Odell and I try to do, as you can see, you are now in a wonderful and fulfilling second relationship, and you're fulfilled with your life, which is really important for people to know. But what we try to do is expose that a life interruption can sometimes be traumatic, or just that, an interruption in our lives, and it can be temporary. And so we will continue to discuss the impact of trauma that issues have on people's lives, and how a moment in time can alter our planned journey. But we'll also discuss that there's a time when we need to just sit and move forward, to say that we're not going to stay where we are, but we're going to continue to move and do something positive in our lives. So I thank you for being on our show.
Yes.
And Odell, I know that you want to share a message as well to our viewers about your training course and how they can get your book.
Yes, well, the Interruptions book is published and it is on Amazon. Interruptions: Disrupting the Silence. You can find it on Amazon. And like once a week, what I do is I post on Facebook, our Facebook and Instagram page, that I am autographing books. And I'll be doing that again next week. So you can cash at me, Zelle me, put money in the bank, however you need to get money to you, and I'll autograph a book and send it to you. So I do that once a week. So the book is out, and next year, Kathy and I are launching the Interruptions workbook that goes along with it, called Let's Talk. And Dr. Tandy, oh, I should be shot. Um, ah, the other doctor from, I should be shot. Who am I
Don't say
talking about?
that.
I know.
No, the one from, he's from DC. He was
The,
on the show with us
the other doctor.
that you introduced us to.
Jonathan, Dr. Jonathan.
Dr. Jonathan, yes. I hope he doesn't see this show. Dr. Jonathan, he wrote in the first part of my book, he wrote a testimony in the book.
Oh, that's great.
Yes,
That's
he wrote
wonderful.
a testimony. Yes, so it was. Thank you for that introduction. So yes, so please remember to like our page, share our page, and see us again. Have a Merry Christmas, everyone. Happy holidays. Dr. Tandy, thank you for joining us, and I can't wait to see you. Please let us know when you're in Connecticut visiting.
I definitely will. Thank you, ladies, for having me on your show. I had so much fun. I'm glad we finally got the technical glitches worked out.
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.